Ted O'Brien, Susan Lee's unveiled the Coalition's economic roadmap and it's back to first principles for your team, lower federal spending and business driving progress. Will that work?
Well, it has to work, and indeed, Rachel, the Australian people will depend on it because there is nothing more important than building a strong economy, and history says it's only the Coalition that can do that. And we said from the get-go of this term of government that we need to return to the values which unite the party. And a lot of those values anchor to how the economy is run, that we must live within our means. This government is not. We need to ensure that we avoid a spending spree, which this government is currently has underway, and we need to ensure we're growing the economic pie.
Relying on economic growth or that economic pie to gradually remove the structural deficit seems like a long road.
Well, there are actually two parts, and that is just one of them. Growing the economic pie is absolutely critical, but the other part is the government has to stop the spending spree. And this is probably the biggest criticism I have of the Albanese government's economic management. They have increased spending. If you look at this year's budget, they are spending $160 billion more than the Coalition's last budget. $160 billion more. And this is the problem because ever since the Hawke government, every treasurer has had to abide by rules. This treasurer, Jim Chalmers, has no rules, which is why spending just keeps on going, and that spending ends up in debt. So we're going to $1.2 trillion of debt. Every single minute we pay $50,000 in interest payments. Ultimately, it's the next generation which will be slugged with the debt. And we are basically making their lives harder if we keep going down this track.
So federal government spending has reached 27% of GDP under this government. Does your plan have a target for where you think spending to GDP should be?
You're right. It is 27%. When they came to government just over 3 years ago, it was 24%. And yet they refused to even contemplate quantifiable fiscal rules.
Returning you to the question, Ted O'Brien, 24%, is that where your target would be, 24%?
So, just to respond then directly to where the Coalition will go, as Susan Lee made very clear yesterday, Labor's approach is not acceptable, and the Coalition's approach will be to have quantifiable fiscal rules. Now, those rules we will announce in due course, but we need to make it very clear what the problem is today, and the commitment has been made that we will be signing up to fiscal rules. But the real concern is measures where this government is deliberately taking to spend on bad policy ideas.
Ted
and
O'Brien,
the one that Susan spoke to yesterday was the EV fringe benefits tax.
Where will you make the cuts? You're talking about Labor's spending there. Where does the Coalition plan to cut back?
Well, let me give you an example as to a bad policy which I don't believe the government should have, therefore should be cut. And that is the government is providing fringe benefits tax concessions for electric vehicles. Under Labor's current plan, the more money you make, the cheaper it is for you to have a lease arrangement for an electric vehicle. I mean, think about that. If you are a nurse on $90,000 and then someone else is a lawyer on $200,000 and both want to have a lease of an electric vehicle, well, the nurse will probably pay about $8,000 more over the life of that leasing arrangement than the lawyer. Why? The everyday Australian taxpayer is paying the bill. So this is the problem that Labor has at the moment. That measure was meant to cost around about $50 million. It's looking at costing around $500 million. You know, like a small business, Rachel, government needs to go line item by line item and find where it has bad policy, and that's an example of just one.
Your colleague Andrew Hastie said earlier in the week he'd quit the front bench if the Coalition remains committed to the net zero target. How is that discussion going in your party room?
I think there are fewer more important discussions than Australia's energy future. And this is why the coalition must have a robust debate. And we make no apology for that. I think the Australian people deserve a robust debate. And the reason for that right now, Rachel, is I think Australians know that something's not right. We are now paying among the highest prices for electricity in the world. The government says, well, we need to take all of these measures because we need to decarbonise. But here's the thing, we're not decarbonising. Under the Albanese government, emissions have flatlined.
Can I return you to the question, what would you like to see done with the net zero target that the coalition took to the last election?
Well, the principle by which we need to work at this stage, before we settle on a position, the basic principle is that we will not have net zero at any cost. And right now we have a government which is going for emissions reduction at any cost to the household, at any cost to the businesses, at any cost to regional Australia.
Ted O'Brien, thanks very much for joining AM.
Thanks very much for yours, Rachel. Cheers.